Alrighty, week 13, learn together. This section that we're in on the Udemy course, which let's just pull over and look at it real quick, right? So we're in to the section 11 that is really our next to our last section. We'll finish 12, but this is the section that is so really brings together and delivers, I hope, to you a skill that is really good to have and marketable. So in this case, what we're doing is we're creating an API. We're creating endpoints for the API. We're using Mongo, in this case, to help us do some nice things like validation and relationship stuff that we'll see later. We're also adding into our mix this time the Postman, right? So if you contextually have what Postman is doing, it's just basically hitting those endpoints that we're setting up in Express so that we can test to see what if we're getting back the responses we hope for based on our code. Okay, so understanding that you have to have your MongoDB running, you have to install Mongoose for this section. You have to, by the way, you're setting up a new project, so you need to go through that whole process of npm init, do that, right? Install Express, install Mongo. And I installed, you'll need to install Validator for this one because we're going to have you, I know it's going to be a shock, but we'll have you set up the email system that we've been working on as to add our skill, to extend our skill base for what you're learning in Andrew's course. So this time, probably not a big surprise as I'm looking over at it, you'll need to have those things set up and you'll need to have the following endpoints. Now, in order to have these endpoints, the user and the email, you need to have those models set up for those two. For the user, it's basically what he did. I don't think I did anything different. But then for the email, you'll have to make sure you go through and set up the necessary fields that you need to do that. And I'm actually going to show you in Postman right now just what this looks like, right? I'm not going to show you the code. I want you to attempt the code without looking at mine. And as always, in your reply, if you do look at it, just say so. If you don't, that's cool, right? Tell me your experience of doing this work, because again, this is such an important thing to conceptually understand what you're doing, which is creating these API endpoints. Think about when we've called the weather, when we think about when we've called dark sky, right? We are hitting their API points setting out on the web. Now, in our case, we're only hosting them locally. And in the next section, we'll actually write some authentication. We won't, in this course, complete the deploying this API to Heroku, but you totally can because he does that in a future section after our course is over. So again, think about this as you're building it in context of how you would take your concept and do this. Okay, so here again are the API endpoints that you want to create for this time, and I'm going to show you them in Mongo, right? So sorry, in Postman. So like if I was to create a new email, I already have a couple of users set up, right? So if I created one called Joe Doe, it sounds so funny, Joe, right? And then I just hit send. By the way, this is the post, right? So this is the other thing you're learning here, right? About, and we've been introduced to this before, but when we're posting data versus getting data, and all the other responses that we send appropriate to that. But I'm going to hit send here. So I get back the 201 that says it was created, and it gives me back that object out of MongoDB, which is awesome. Now I can also get users, so I can see a list of my users. So now I can see I have 3. Jane, I must have set up Jane twice. And then I can send email. So you can say here, and this, you need to do this. You have to have a sender, a receiver, a subject, and a body. right? And then set those up. And then it looks like I've already sent this one as well. You can get emails. So I could get a list of all the emails. And later we'll add to these. But in this case, get emails. Let me make sure that's right. Oh, yeah. So this actually is by ID. This other one, and actually I could go ahead and do it with you, right? So in this case, localhost. I thought I had them all done, but I didn't. So you always have localhost. In this case, just email, because I just want to see a list of all the emails. And then I'm just telling it, okay, send that. My response is expect JSON, which we know we set that up in our express route. So because we're doing a get, then if we did this right, and cool, I did, is it sends me all the emails that I have created. Okay. All right. So that's your task. Again, a really important one. Getting us ready, setting us up for our final push in this class. And again, the more you think about what you'll be doing, and honestly, if you have the time, actually doing it as we're moving through this last two sections, I'm telling you, the end of this class will be so much better for you because you will have done it along the way. So, if you can, if your time allows, then go ahead as you finish the learn together, go ahead and do it for your own day, for your own concept that you've been implementing. Okay. So, anyway, that's what you need to do. But hopefully you heard me say you have to set up a new directory and you have to create those required, the DB for Mongoose, set up your models for, in this case, the user and the email, and then set up your, and I ended up calling my index.js, which I appreciate that he did that in this time as well, and then wrote the code that would then, and by the way, this is not the last time, but now we transition after this, because when you do this work, you're going to be using promises. And part of the reason I stopped at this section was that now after this, we transition to using our third final paradigm of writing asynchronous code by using async await, which it'll be so light, meaning it's much more straightforward from a code perspective. But once you've learned, and you have now, callbacks, promises, the final one, believe it or not, it may not make sense that given what you know about programming that it's going to be easier, but it is. But understanding really what happens with async will help you, because even async await is basically just written kind of like classes is written on top of constructor functions. This is the similar concept. Okay, hope this helps you out. Do your reply, post your code. What do you have to do to show this, right? So in this case, just a link to your code. I'm not sure, and actually we'll talk about in the coming weeks how you'll share your Postman setup with me. I've done it a couple ways in the past. Ultimately, by the last development, you'll just export your Postman and send it to me. But for this week, just get that working, post your code, and then I'll just pull your code and then make sure it runs from my perspective. Okay? All right. Peace out.